Okay, so our idea for this is really actually inspired by a workshop that we're helping to plan this October on convergence research. But we were really interested in how some of the leadership in a lot of these big centers and communities are actually implementing and practicing the theories. So we have a fantastic panel today of people in this administrative space. Dr. Jason Owen-Smith, who is the co-founder and executive director of the Institute for Research on Innovation in Science, or IRIS. Dr. Levent Atici, and I'm sorry if I didn't say that correctly, the Associate Vice Provost for Student-Centered Interdisciplinary Initiatives here at North Carolina State University, and Dr. Maude Cuchiara, who is our Managing Director here at the STEP Center. And so they're each going to provide a lightning talk about their unique roles and how they support integration within their teams, the methods that they're using, and how they gauge when it's working or maybe when it's not working and they need to pivot. And then they're going to do a little bit of interpanel discussion followed by a Q&A. So I guess we'll start with you, Dr. Owen-Smith.
Hey, thanks very much for having me. So I'm going to turn on my stopwatch so that I stay on time and try to share my screen here. Can everybody see my beginning of my PowerPoint? Actually, sorry, I'm trying to get to the, there we go. Can everybody see my presentation?
I think it's loading.
Yeah. All right. Is it moving?
It's flashing.
Okay, let me try that again. We may have to have what my advisor used to call the interpretive dance version of the thing, but in any case, I'm going to stop sharing and I will try one more time. And if it doesn't work, we will do the interpretive dance version. The goal here today from me is to attempt to give you all a sense of how I think about these questions in the three hats that I wear in my day-to-day job. And those three hats are as a researcher, as a builder of infrastructure, and as a research administrator. Can we see now? Yes, no?
I think as soon as you start the presentation view, it just starts flashing. But if you just maybe close out of the presentation view or the full screen,
all right, well,
we can see them okay.
We will try it this way then. So
try the reading view instead of presentation view, just reading view.
All right, well, I don't know how to do reading view. So you all will get the backstage version. In any case, three hats. There we go. Can you see the three hats?
We can.
All right. The researcher beanie, the infrastructure builder's Viking helm, and the lovely Stade Homburg for my research administrator persona. The key questions that I tend to ask are intertwined across these three because I can't really in any significant way separate out how I approach questions of measurement from questions of how I practice interdisciplinary research, which is my viewpoint as researcher, someone who runs a long-standing, relatively large interdisciplinary team and increasingly builds and leads multi-site, multidisciplinary groups, often that are multi-sector. Over the course of my career, I've written and collaborated with people I counted last night in doing this from 24 different fields, ranging from sort of applied math to bioethics, and published in a lot of different ones. And so I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to do this kind of work. And I also study this kind of work. And so much of what you're going to hear from me today in our conversation comes from the perspective of a practitioner who's kind of more or less unwillingly been pulled in a variety of ways into putting my money where my mouth is, moving from academic research about a topic to administration and measurement. The second piece of this is a view as infrastructure builder. The Institute for Research on Innovation and Science, which I co-founded and still run, is a data repository that is a place where major universities join a consortium to share information drawn from their administrative systems about the direct cost expenditures on sponsored project grants from all sources, which allow us, both for individual campuses and in the aggregate, to do data science work and to build research resources that allow an interdisciplinary community, now of about 500 data users, again, from many different fields, to do research and reporting and work with institutions and associations to try to understand, communicate, and ideally improve what you might call the public value of the academic research mission. And that means that we face a variety of questions about how to facilitate with data and with infrastructure and through training and kind of responsible but inclusive access to restricted data, the ability to do the kinds of work in a variety of different modalities that often come down to measuring precisely the characteristics of teams, their outputs, their inputs, and eventually the ways in which their work has an impact on the world. And that raises questions at a higher level, both in terms of how we put together our systems and in terms of how we think about constructing data, constructing agreements, down to the level of governance. And then finally, there's the Hamburg, the view as administrator. In my role at Michigan, I'm also an associate vice president for research. Technically, the title is associate vice president for research for institutional capabilities and research intelligence. In that capacity, I was brought in to design and now run the university's central research analytics unit, which is called the Research Analysis and Data Integration Office, or RADIO. RADIO is, I'm sorry, that was my timer. RADIO is an internal office that's dedicated to research analytics for the purposes of decision support to help executive officers and deans figure out what they can about the current state of the research environment and about the current state of research at Michigan across what right now is about a $2 billion a year research portfolio, in order to make decisions about where to put resources, how to structure programs, the kinds of strategic decisions that are made generally at an institutional level and that span schools and colleges. And in that role, I think a lot about how to build and sustain infrastructure for what you might call large-scale convergent research. Think research centers and institutes that span colleges and units. We also think a lot about how to support and seed research development efforts, particularly aimed at large-scale, complex, sort of grand challenge style external awards. And so with that as background, the kinds of questions that I tend to think about as a researcher, very micro, but how can things like metaphor, analogy, storytelling, interactive kinds of work really facilitate problems of problem definition, coordination in these interdisciplinary teams? How do you help people speak across boundaries? As an institution builder, the key question for me in convergence and in knowing how things work and what often shapes measurement is about access and participation and how you ensure that all participants have ways to find something valuable to them on their terms in the use of resources. And as an administrator, I spend a lot of time worrying both about measuring what works, but also about trying to attend to the unintended consequences of policies that sometimes aren't constructed for research purposes, but that affect them in really significant ways. And so these are the kinds of things that I would be really interested in hearing people's thoughts about and talking more about. Thanks.
Awesome, fantastic. If we don't have any clarifying questions for Dr. Owen-Smith, okay. Dr. Atici, do you want to go next?
Okay, I'm on. Let me see if I will run into any technical glitch. Are we good?
Yes, we can see your.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Levent Atici. I am a professor in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, and also Associate Vice Provost for Student-Centered Interdisciplinary Initiatives within the University Interdisciplinary Programs Office. Here's my email for communication. I'd like to start by thanking the organizers for this unique opportunity to connect with about 50 thought partners. So this is a great conversation, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And please, again, reach out if you would like to expand these conversations. So I'll start with a kind of 30,000 feet overview, because, you know, subscribing to, and I've already heard that term multiple times today, systems thinking, and subscribing to the notion that every system produces or achieves the results it's set to achieve. It is super important to have the institutional commitment to actually integrate rather complex ecosystems, especially in a university like North Carolina State University with 10 colleges priced plus University College and Graduate School and all the administrative bureaucracy. So it's super rugged landscape to navigate, and it's important to have that institutional commitment to create this culture with structures, metrics of success, centralized and integrated strategies, policy, cutting edge physical infrastructure, and also that, more importantly, super ideology. So luckily, it's one of NC State's strengths, because NC State has this very clear and explicit commitment to expanding and enhancing interdisciplinarity on its campus. And you can see that two of these strategic plans within the past 2 decades actually have really explicit statements referencing interdisciplinarity. In 2011, address societal challenges through interdisciplinary teams, which led to something concrete. I'll talk about it in my next slide. And then the current Empowering the Extraordinary strategic plan also has interdisciplinary learning through high-impact experiences, interdisciplinary collaboration, and an integrative approach to this complex ecosystem. So all the credit goes to the steady hands of the leadership, the Chancellor Andy Woodson and Provost Arden. So some foundation milestones toward achieving these goals. In 2011, NC State launched the Chancellor's Faculty Excellence Program with 20 interdisciplinary clusters with more than 80 faculty hires. Now the number is 70 because people move and move to leadership roles or retire, etc. So that was the beginning of actually this journey. And then 2020, there was a task force which actually kind of materialized this notion of a central university office, which is Office of University Interdisciplinary Programs, where I'm located. With that, NC State has actually become really, really entrenched in this idea of just articulating interdisciplinarity into its education, undergraduate curriculum, graduate student training, research and scholarship, and also as a land-grant university, its outreach, extension, and community engagements in technology and knowledge transfer. So this is the Office of University Program. And here's the org chart. We currently have 4 academies: Data Science and AI Academy, Genetics and Genomics Academy, Global One Health Academy, and super recent Climate and Sustainability Academy, which came out of 2 previous initiatives in coastal resilience and climate change and sustainability initiatives. So that also gives you a sense of this ontologies and taxonomies, because initiatives may grow up to become academies with that tripartite role. We have Integrative Sciences Initiative, and you see the building Woodson Hall, which is currently under construction. And then we have Plant Sciences Initiative, and it's beautiful building. We have Shelton Leadership Center, Innovation and Entrepreneurship, also science engagement through university museum partnerships, and biotechnology program. So this is the administrative skeleton. And lastly, you can see that Office of University Interdisciplinary Program with its entities is in a place to actually articulate. So this is my slide talking about what I'm thinking, what I'm spending my time envisioning, and so this is my goal, this is my wish list, because my title is Student-Centered Initiatives, and my previous role was Director of Undergraduate Research. So I'm trying to actually create this structure to align and articulate all of our scholars programs, first-year programs, high-impact student experiences such as service learning, global learning, honors program, career development, to actually engage students to bring undergraduate and graduate students into this space by articulating. I used the analogy of defragging this system. And of course, this is super nice and well organized, but this is the idealized org chart. This is the vision, not the current reality. And I think my time is up, and I'll be happy to talk more about these within the next section of the panel. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Dr. Cuchiara, are you ready?
Sure thing. There. Okay. And just make sure I'm doing the right thing. Oh, always changes. Okay. I'm assuming y'all can see my slides. Is that right, Allison? Okay.
We can, but I wonder if you could maybe move a tiny bit closer to your microphone.
But yes, the people have been telling me they can't hear me. Okay, I'll speak up too. Can you hear me now better?
That's better. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so oh gosh, I'm sorry, y'all. Had to put my computer to sleep.
Oh no.
I have the hot corners on my Mac, and it did that. Okay, apologies. So my name is Maude Cuchiara. I'm the managing director of the STEP Center, which I think y'all have heard from a number of folks that have been involved with that center, but we're funded by the National Science Foundation. We are focused on phosphorus sustainability, and we use convergence research as the way that we're doing our approach to the research that we're doing. So in my role, I really am mostly doing integration kind of day to day. So a number of different things that I do. I'm working to integrate the research activities and programs of all greater than 100 STEPS participants that range from undergraduates to faculty and staff that are coming from approximately 28 or more different disciplines. 11 different institutions in 6 different states. So a lot of people coming with a lot of different perspectives. I oversee our center-wide communication efforts so that everybody kind of knows what's going on within the center. I organize our reporting to the National Science Foundation, which requires integrating information from a number of different people and trying to tell a coherent story. And I know my colleague Jason just mentioned talking about storytelling, so that's something I'm be very interested to hear more about. And I also feel like I really have to have a big picture view of the entire center, so know what's going on in kind of every nook and cranny with enough level of detail and understanding to connect our center participants to each other, to connect them to new opportunities that could be research funding, partnerships, the like. So we have used a number of different integration methods within the center, and I will say that, you know, a lot of this was spearheaded by Christine Hendren, who is also, you know, one of the leaders here in Interreach. And it was definitely intentional. So from the very beginning, we were talking about a lot of these different methods, and we had buy-in from the entire team as we were starting to put the center together. So I think that was really incredibly important. So we expect our participants to embrace these individual habits of mind, and due to time, I won't get into all of them, but they are epistemic humility, interdependence, and co-creation of knowledge. We've also developed and implemented a number of different resources that I'll talk about a little bit here. So these are just a few examples of some of the different resources that we have within the center. Again, I'm happy to talk more about any of these in detail, but just to give you a flavor, for example, we use convergence boundary objects to help connect people across disciplinary and other boundaries. One of this convergence boundary object is a physical or abstract object that people across our center can connect to and understand, and it provides a way for them to relate to each other within the center and to relate to the kind of overall vision of the center. So in this example, we have what we call our phosphorus flow diagram, and it's essentially demonstrates the flow of phosphorus through its cycle from mining of phosphate rock through the agricultural system and then into food and how humans use it, where it eventually ends up. And what's really neat about this is that the people across the center can connect the work that they're doing to specific places on the flow diagram, which helps them to understand, one, kind of how they fit into, again, the phosphorus big picture, but also how they relate to one another in the center, and it can drive new research directions. And then another example, I think, kind of has been really critical, and again, envisioned from the beginning, is the use of dedicated experts in integration. So myself, our integration director, Christine Hendren, and also our several of our postdoctoral associates, including both Kim and Allison, who play really critical roles in developing a lot of the resources that we use, but also in implementing them. And this has been so successful. We are actually in our kind of in between. So we've been funded for 5 years, and we are in the midst of our going into a renewal. And so we think that this is so critical that we've envisioned having more of these types of what we call boundary spanning positions available to grad students and postdocs so they can help to develop these types of skills. Another thing that I think is really critical in what we do is this, a lot of our internal communication efforts. I think kind of the two things I'll point to here are we have a weekly email that basically collates a lot of different information, a way to give updates, celebrate our successes, provide information about new opportunities, and because we do this in like a very organized and structured way, it comes at the same time every week. People know when to expect it, and we're not bombarding them constantly with emails. So I think, you know, it's a little thing, but I think it's really helpful to people in the center. I think the other big thing that's been really important to our success is this weekly meeting, which we call our seminar, and it's a consistent and structured meeting time. We have basically a rotating schedule that focuses on different topics. It provides a way for people in the center, it's a space to connect. It's a dedicated hour a week. And that's, you know, the expectation is that everyone arrives, everyone participates and engages. And because we have this similar structure each week, people know what to expect and how they can engage and participate. And I think that's another critical piece of the puzzle. And then, so kind of lastly, thinking about how do we know it's working or not working? I think one thing that's really important is that the leadership in the center is open to listening. We are constantly reflecting on a lot of the processes, programs, activities that we're doing, and we're on the fly, we're dynamic. If something's not working, we toss it, but we're listening to folks. A really big piece that's important for that, though, is that we've had, again, this buy-in and from the beginning, and we have developed trust within the center. So people do feel comfortable raising issues when things are not working. And I think that has been really critical in helping to alleviate or prevent a lot of conflict, because there's this sense of, here's the expectations, but if I'm not feeling like this is working or something is wrong, they don't hesitate to come to leadership. And the other thing, I think, again, when we're thinking about the people that are in place, we've also, in the past couple of years, hired a staff role for a student engagement coordinator. And I think that has really been helpful in giving the students someone to talk to if they don't feel comfortable coming to leadership. We do some more kind of point places of doing some assessments, so using short polls during our weekly meetings to understand how people felt about the seminar. Was it a good use of their time? Did they understand the purpose of why we were meeting today? So we're really big on making sure people understand the goals of the things that we're doing and reflecting on that afterwards. I think another thing is we can tell if it's working is how engaged are people. Are they coming to seminar? Are they participating when we are in meetings? And we can see when people become disinterested, and we've been able to react to that and change things that we're doing to help mitigate some of the challenges we've seen, especially particularly communicating across the different disciplines. We also have a formal evaluation and an evaluator who's helping to develop a tool so that an instrument that we can use to assess some of the how well the things that we're implementing are working. And we have a faculty member that's doing research in education to understand how our students are experiencing this Convergence Research Center and doing convergence research. So I think I probably was a little over, but that's all I have for today, and happy to continue the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Maude. Thank all of you. That was fantastic. Obviously, there is a lot going on in this space. So we thought it would be helpful to our panelists, and also as a thank you for participating today, for them to get an opportunity to kind of pick each other's brains a little bit in sort of a phone a friend round. So if each of you would like to ask the others a question, does anybody want to go first? Or oh yeah, go ahead.
Sure. I love the concept of structuring a sort of boundary object for the center. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you picked and developed one, how it came about, and how it gets used.
Oh, that's a really great question. So we have the phosphorus flow diagram, for example, evolved from conversations early on when the center started. It was derived from, and it probably isn't noted on there, but it was derived from a publication by some other folks in the phosphorus field. And it really resonated with the team, like we should do this, we should modify this phosphorus flow diagram. And that's how it evolved into this thing that everybody could connect to. So it kind of started with the leadership, but it was a way for them to talk about the work we were doing in the center and orient not only the team, but when we're presenting this, like during the initial site visit. Some other ones, and I'm not going to put Allison on the spot, but there is a great paper that Allison just led that's also about another one of our boundary objects, which is these triple bottom line scenario sites, which are physical locations where we have a historic amount of data, physical footprints, connections to different stakeholders that are using that space. It's a place we can also use as a test bed for different technologies that are developed within the center. So that's another one of our boundary objects. And they also provide a space that we've taken students to, so they can really kind of experience what it's like within like the challenges that, for example, in South Florida, what are the phosphorus challenges in that physical location? And they get to talk with stakeholders. They were able to talk with stakeholders, and it was really a great experience. And I don't know that I won't go on too much longer because I don't want to take a bunch of time, but I don't know that I got to your initial question, which is how do you come up with them? And I think that's a great question. I think, it came from conversations that people had over time. And I don't think it was a collective effort. And by that, I mean, we didn't, it wasn't Christine Hendren as the integration director said, hey, I really think we should use these TBL sites as a boundary object, or we should use this phosphorus flow diagram. I think there were things that just naturally came to the surface as the center has evolved, that makes sense as a way to connect individuals. And then the way that we use them a lot within the center, and I didn't talk about, we have, like, for example, a very structured way to share research projects that actually Kim Bourne developed, so that we can make sure that people understand the research that's going on. So if you're an economics faculty or researcher, you can explain what you're doing to, plant scientists and a sociologist. And so we use those boundary objects within those research presentations to help everybody understands, okay, so if I'm, I know where I sit on this phosphorus flow diagram, and so this is what the economist is working on, I can relate to that. And so we use them really a lot in the center to help kind of as a guidepost and orient the folks. So hope that answers the question.
Yes, thanks.
Awesome. Maude, great answer. Do you want to ask the next question?
Yes, I do. I have a question for both Dr. Owen-Smith and Dr. Atici. So kind of, since you all are both in administrative roles, what do you think is kind of the most challenging aspect, or what do you see as one of the most challenging aspects of institutionalizing interdisciplinary or convergence research? I know we in the center have experienced some challenges, especially as we start to train these new scholars that maybe don't fit into a neat disciplinary bucket. What do you see as, are there other challenges, and what do you think from an administrative role, what are some important things that we should be doing institutionally to help facilitate convergence, integration, interdisciplinarity?
Jason, you want to go first?
Sure. So I think there are some specific answers that I could give about my institution, but I think they are probably instances of more generic answers. The challenge, I mean, I'm a sociologist, and in particular, I'm a sociologist who thinks about organizations, institutions, and networks. And so I tend to think structurally about a lot of these questions. And for me, the challenge of real sustained convergent research, when you get beyond the level of a few researchers metaphorically are actually picking up the phone, calling each other, and deciding to work together, to something that requires sustained investment, career tracks, budget lines, staff time, administrative support, all of those things, is that the kinds of things that these things are tend to fit uncomfortably in the standard business model of many universities, which often draws distinctions between, activity-based budgeting and, budgeting that is more for central services and other kinds of things. At least in many contexts where I have worked, that tends to put convergent kinds of activities at odds with, rather than where I think they should be, kind of complementary to the more traditional, what you might think of as verticals of the university, the traditional disciplines, the traditional schools and colleges. And so we often end up, I believe, in conflict for resources, for attention, with deans, with other administrative units, faculty or students who find a home in institutions or institutes or centers working in these spaces may have trouble navigating standard career pathways that are oriented toward moving through the vertical hierarchy of a college, even the honorific structure of many universities. Mine, for instance, you can't become a distinguished university professor unless you become a collegiate professor. But if your career is centered on a thing that spans colleges, there's no route to become a collegiate professor. Right. There are a number of such things that kind of point to the ways in which just structurally these kinds of convergent parts of the organization sit uncomfortably in a traditional university setting. And I think we don't have a really strong answer for that, because many of them grow out of external research funding and thus are thought of in that way, rather than in terms of more standard tuition generating or other kinds of activities. And it often means that we're forced to define and redefine ourselves as budget flows change, as missions change, even as leadership changes. And at least in my experience, there's often a kind of management by emergency. You sort of hit a point where you've got an impending cliff and you have to go around making the case again to whoever is in the roles. And that's not the most sort of stable way to do what is inherently an uncertain and difficult kind of work. And so I haven't knocked it, but I think that for me is kind of the fundamental structural challenge of maintaining at scale this kind of work.
I'll go next. Of course, as an anthropologist, I always think about cultures, and that's within the specific domain is this same, it applies. So we have this century-old culture of this entity known as the university, which is deeply entrenched in disciplines, right? So you have colleges, departments, majors, and minors. Then you juxtapose interdisciplinarity next to it. That's a culture war, right? So in that, because when you hire faculty into a specific college, into a specific department, and unless you have modified and updated, revised tenure and promotion guidelines or policy, right? It'll be a challenge for faculty to negotiate roles and responsibilities and commitment to this or that. So in that sense, structural and cultural, incentives need to be there. Then you also have accompanying institutional policy enabling systems and processes. I think NC State has accomplished that by creating these Chancellor Excellent Faculty Excellent program, and also creating alternative route and pathways for faculty to actually advance their career. So that's an incentive, that's an enabling university structure and systems. That's super important. Then also, I mean, even things like physical infrastructure spaces, right? Interdisciplinary spaces, they're important because all the spaces are, going into this ownership issue or territorial boundaries. So I think there are a lot of boundaries, ideological boundaries, territorial geographic boundaries, organizational boundaries. And what I find most difficult is this, like having to work across these organizational boundaries, which come in too many different forms. So in that sense, when you have spaces like Plant Science Initiative with a different mission, right? It's not a college, it's a different entity with a different mission. That actually space, which with a supra maybe topical goal, right? Global challenges going beyond traditional disciplinary boundaries, that actually helps. So I think there are a lot of challenges, but these challenges also provide us with drivers for change and also opportunity. Business models and operational models could also be named as additional challenges, because what's the business model for an interdisciplinary initiative? Is it university supported? Is it fully funded by external forces, right? Is it funded by the university or by an individual college, by an individual department? So in that sense, identifying clear business models, identifying clear operational models with the right focus and scope, creating these infrastructure and superstructure, aligning them with the university's strategic vision and strategic plan. And I think I feel really fortunate to have landed at NC State, because in many institutions, I know that interdisciplinary is always a goal, but you don't have that top-down vision endorsement by senior leadership. Here, this is momentous time for NC State, because we also have other synergistic initiatives, such as our current quality enhancement plan, which actually entertains the idea of scaling up interdisciplinary high-impact experiences. So when you have that university level strategic vision coming down to every college, every university unit, I think it helps eliminating some of these barriers and challenges, such as cultural incentives, right? Because it's not a college incentive or a department incentive, it's the university strategic vision to expand and enhance interdisciplinarity. So I think that overall culture is important. Systems and policy, they're important, but these are major challenges. And I think it's telling that there are only a handful of universities where you can see these infrastructure and superstructure align, or bottom-up consensus building with top-down consensus building aligned, because most universities actually just can't deal with these major challenges because they don't have the right investments.
Yeah, these are definitely some tough institutional challenges. Levent, do you have a question for your peers? And then we'll see if we can't catch one or two from the audience before our time is up.
Yeah, I'm gonna direct a question to my colleague, Jason. A higher level university administration and thinking. I'm curious about whether they have clearly defined metric of success within the interdisciplinary space at Michigan University, because these are usually gray areas.
The short answer is no. There is very certainly not one metric to rule them. There are many metrics, and part of that is a function of the purpose to which a given analysis is put, and the type of decision that is being made. And so the kinds of questions that I get asked tend to be more on the order of what you might call leading indicator questions. They're rarely end state evaluation questions. They tend to be more on the order of, can we see evidence that program X is facilitating new collaboration across organizational boundaries? What would be evidence of a change in the character of the research we produce around topic Y? So I think the general consensus for us is that the real goal of any effort to try to cultivate a different approach to research is because you want to see down the road a change in the character and the quality of the impact that the work we do in the institution has on the world. But we recognize that seeing that can sometimes take decades, and it follows a very uncertain path that is in no way sort of unicausal, right? You can't trace it back to often to one person or one institution. So we're left asking, what are the intermediate things that are on a human scale and that we can actually maybe get our hands on with levers? And those tend to be about collaboration, about engagement, about intermediate products of research, about trying to capture changes in the content, character, participation that can be seen in the sort of 3 to 5 year window, for what it's worth.
Thank you. And I agree that assessment and evaluation in the initial stages usually come in the form of qualitative and binary, not necessarily well-defined quantitative metrics and measurements. Thank you, Jess.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Well, let's open the floor to our audience here. We've got about 4 or 5 minutes left. Does anybody have any burning questions they want to ask of our panelists? Thoughts?
I have one.
Absolutely, go ahead.
I was particularly curious hearing about STEPS from Dr. Cuchiara, but for the others as well. Is there sort of a balance that you like to strike between asking people to participate in all the teaming activities and measuring engagement and coming to the seminars versus focus time on their research work, the bread and butter of what they're there to do? I work in a center where we have projects that are funded, but we also ask them to work in very interdisciplinary ways and be part of our center. And we hold this tension of how much time do we ask people to participate in the center-wide things and engagement surveys and those kinds of things versus their bread and butter research?
Oh, yeah, that's a wonderful question. I would love to hear other people's answers to this. So at STEPS, we really try to use that 1 hour a week time to do a lot of the other asks as well. So, for example, we'll seed that time to give for people to do our annual evaluation. So we try to utilize, not ask for too much kind of center-wide focus during the week, except for that 1 hour. Now, there's similarly, we have research projects that are going to be meeting kind of on a more regular basis, and we leave that to the PIs of those projects to determine kind of what the regularity of those meetings are. I mean, we expect them to meet, and they have, a few deliverables. But we also try to minimize the amount of deliverables too. I think that was a major focus point early on in the center. was trying to make things easy for people. So any kind of reporting, any kind of asks are done in a very structured way. I try to do a lot of the work for people and ask very kind of simple questions, like, you know, give me a few bullet points and then I can help write it up. And so we do try, so we try to minimize that. I think still people have this sense of, you know, we're asking too, sometimes I think that we're asking too much of them, but I think we do have struck a nice balance. And the reason I say that is that we do see pretty consistent attendance at the weekly seminar. And with other STCs that we've talked with, our, you know, colleagues, science and technology centers, they are shocked when I tell them we have a weekly meeting that's an hour long that everybody comes to, because they can't imagine everybody coming to a meeting once a week. So I think, you know, I ascribe that to those meetings being pretty structured and not asking too much more of people's time. I think in terms of other times when folks are getting together, there's, you know, an annual, you know, we have an annual site visit, but we're not asking people to fly out any other times. We don't have an additional annual meeting. A lot of those other kind of the retreats and things like that tend to be optional, and you can opt in. So, oh, I know it's the top of the hour. So hopefully that answered your question, but love to hear other people's stuff.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, everyone. I want to thank Dr. Owen-Smith, Dr. Atici, and Dr. Cuchiara, and also Allison and Kim for arranging this and moderating for us. This was really fascinating. I wish we had a whole other hour. I have a whole huge list of questions here. I'm sure there are many people here that feel the same, but thank you to our panelists for sharing your perspective. This is really fascinating and helpful to all of us who are in this world, steeped in this world. And coming up May 13th, we have Maritza Salazar-Campo from University of California, Irvine, and then we'll be concluding the series on June 10th with Shalini Misra, Megan Rippey, and Stanley Grant from Virginia Tech. So thanks again, everyone, for coming, into our panelists and organizers, and welcome to Allison and Kim once again to our leadership team. And we will see you again next month, and I hope you get to enjoy some spring weather in the meantime. So take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.